The stars shimmered against the black canvas of space as the massive ship approached Earth's orbit. Inside the United Nations Emergency Chamber, world leaders and military officials stared at the screens showing the alien vessel. It was 3 times the size of the largest aircraft carrier ever built, with smooth, curved lines that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "It's slowing down," said General Frank Winters, his knuckles white as he gripped the edge of the table. "They're positioning themselves in high orbit." The room had been in session for 48 hours straight since the object first appeared near Jupiter and began its deliberate journey toward Earth. After centuries of wondering if humanity was alone in the universe, they had their answer. "All attempts at communication have been acknowledged but not answered," said Dr. Olivia Marsh, head of NASA's communication team. "Until now." The main screen flickered, and a face appeared, almost human, but not quite. The being had pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer under lights. Large, almond-shaped eyes of deep purple studied them. Its face was narrow, with high cheekbones and a small mouth. No hair was visible on its head. "People of Earth," the being spoke in perfect English, its voice melodic and calming. "I am Lady Zarela, ambassador of the Viridian Collective. We have observed your world for some time and believe the moment for formal contact has arrived." The silence in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. President Laura Bennett was the first to find her voice. "We welcome you to Earth, Ambassador Zarela. We are honored by your presence." Lady Zarela's lips curved into what might have been a smile. "We will send a delegation to your planet in 3 days' time. Please prepare a suitable reception area. We come in peace and wish to establish beneficial relations between our peoples." The screen went dark. Chaos erupted in the chamber as officials argued about protocols, security, and logistics. In the corner, watching silently, stood Jack Harper. At 35, he had the weathered look of someone who had seen too much. His brown hair was cut short, military style, and a scar ran along his right jaw, a souvenir from his 3rd tour in the Middle East. "Major Harper," General Winters called out. "A word." Jack made his way through the crowd to the general. "What do you make of this?" Winters asked. "They could have attacked without warning if that was their intention," Jack said. "The fact they're talking is good. But that ship is clearly built for more than peaceful exploration." Winters nodded. "That's why I'm putting your name forward for the reception team." "Sir, you've got combat experience if things go south, but you've also got that diplomatic training from your time as military liaison. Plus, you can read people better than anyone I know." "They're not people, sir. They're aliens. All the more reason I want someone who can spot trouble before it starts." 3 days later, Jack stood at attention among diplomats and scientists as the Viridian shuttle descended from the sky. It landed with barely a sound on the special platform constructed in Geneva. The door opened, and Lady Zarela emerged, flanked by 6 tall Viridians in sleek metallic clothing. Up close, the aliens were even more striking. They stood nearly 7 feet tall, moving with fluid grace that suggested both strength and control. Lady Zarela approached the human delegation, her eyes scanning each face before settling on President Bennett. "The Viridian Collective extends greetings," she said, her voice carrying easily across the platform. "We bring knowledge and opportunity to Earth." Jack noticed something in her tone, a subtle inflection he couldn't quite place. As introductions continued, he studied the aliens' body language. They were polite, but there was something in the way they held themselves, the slight tilt of their heads when humans spoke. It reminded him of something he'd seen before, of officers visiting remote villages, smiling at locals while seeing them as primitives. As Lady Zarela's gaze briefly met his, Jack felt a chill. Behind her pleasant expression, he saw something else entirely. Condescension. 6 months after first contact, Jack Harper stood in line with 11 other humans at the boarding ramp of the Viridian transport vessel. Each carried a single bag with personal items, the rest of their equipment already loaded onto the ship. They were the chosen few, scientists, linguists, diplomats, and Jack, the security specialist. "Final boarding call for cultural exchange representatives," announced a computerized voice. Jack took a deep breath. For the next year, they would live on the Viridian homeworld, learning their technology and culture while teaching about humanity. Earth governments had jumped at the chance when Lady Zarilla proposed the exchange. "Having second thoughts, Major?" asked Dr. Samantha Wells, a xenobiologist with bright eyes and an eager smile. "Just wondering what we're really walking into," Jack replied. "The opportunity of a lifetime," she said, patting his arm before boarding. Jack nodded but couldn't shake his unease. During the months of preparation, he had watched the Viridians carefully. They shared technology freely, medical advances, cleaner energy solutions, but always held something back. As if showing a child how to build a simple model while keeping the real machine hidden away. The journey took 3 weeks in the Viridian ship, which moved through space in ways Earth scientists couldn't fully explain. When they finally arrived, the humans gathered at the viewing windows, gasping at the sight of Viridia. The planet glowed with brilliant blues and purples, with massive cities that seemed to flow like liquid silver across the landscape. Their landing was smooth. When the doors opened, the air that rushed in was sweet and clean, with a hint of something like cinnamon. A delegation of Viridians waited, led by a tall male who introduced himself as Mentor Kryn. "Welcome to Viridia," he said with a bow. "Your quarters have been prepared in the Learning District." The humans were ushered into hovering transports that took them through the capital city. Buildings stretched impossibly high, connected by transparent bridges. Flying vehicles moved in perfect patterns between them. Everything seemed to glow from within. After settling into their quarters, comfortable but simple rooms in a dedicated building, the humans were summoned to an orientation hall. Lady Zarilla stood on a raised platform, dressed in flowing garments that seemed to change color as she moved. "The exchange program begins tomorrow," she announced. "Each of you will be assigned to a Viridian mentor based on your specialty. But first, you must understand our society." She gestured, and a holographic display appeared, showing 5 distinct colored bands arranged in a pyramid. Viridian society functions through harmony of purpose. Each citizen knows their place and role. The luminaries, she pointed to the top purple band, are our visionaries and leaders. Below them, the architects design and create. Then the guardians who protect, the cultivators who nurture, and finally, the servants who maintain. She smiled, though it didn't reach her eyes. For simplicity and integration purposes, all humans will be classified within the servant caste during your stay. Murmurs rippled through the human group. Jack felt his jaw tighten. Dr. Wells raised her hand. "But we have different specialties and ranks. I'm a senior xenobiologist with 3 doctorates. Lady Zarilla's smile cooled. "Indeed. Most impressive for your species. However, your biological and technological development is several thousand years behind ours. Even your most brilliant minds would struggle with concepts our children master. This classification is not an insult but a practical assessment." Jack watched his colleagues' faces fall as the reality of their position became clear. They hadn't come as equals but as curiosities, clever pets to be studied and shown around. The next morning, Jack received his assignment. He would be serving directly under Lady Zarilla, assisting with her cultural research into human societies. When he arrived at her chambers, she barely looked up from her desk. "Servant Harper," she said, the words like ice. "You will begin by organizing these data crystals. Try not to damage them with your primitive handling." Jack stood straight, his military training keeping his expression neutral despite the burning in his chest. This was going to be a very long year. 3 months into the exchange program, Jack had settled into a routine of quiet anger. Each day, Lady Zarilla found new ways to remind him of his place. She would order him to stand silently for hours during her meetings, only to fetch her drinks or carry her belongings. When important visitors came, she would introduce him as her human study subject, rather than by name or rank. The other humans faced similar treatment. Dr. Wells had been reduced to cleaning laboratory equipment rather than conducting research. The linguist, Paul Edwards, was only allowed to teach basic Earth languages to Viridian children, never permitted to learn the deeper aspects of the Viridian tongue. "We need to file a formal complaint," Dr. Wells said during their weekly human-only gathering. "This isn't what we agreed to." "I've tried," said Carol Young, the diplomatic officer. "My messages to Earth are being delayed or edited. The Viridians control all communications." Jack leaned against the wall, watching his colleagues. Some had given up, accepting their role as glorified servants. Others still fought in small ways. None had made any real progress. "They're studying our breaking points," Jack said quietly. The room fell silent. "What do you mean?" asked Paul. "This isn't just about them feeling superior. They're actively testing how much we'll take before we snap or submit completely." Jack straightened up. "And I'm done playing along." The next day, Lady Zarela informed Jack that a special delegation of luminaries, the highest Viridian caste, would be attending a ceremonial dinner that evening. Leaders from all 12 Viridian provinces would be present. "You will attend me," she said, not looking up from her desk. "Wear the formal servant garments provided." Jack looked at the folded clothes on the side table, a simple gray outfit with Lady Zarela's personal symbol on the chest. "No," he said. Lady Zarela froze, then slowly raised her eyes. "Excuse me. I'll attend the dinner, but I'll wear my Earth military dress uniform, as a representative of humanity." Her laugh was like glass breaking. "How charmingly primitive. Your species still divides itself with tribal markers for killing each other." She waved her hand dismissively. "Wear what you wish. It changes nothing." That evening, Jack stood tall in his formal uniform, complete with medals and rank insignia. The Viridian luminaries filled the grand hall, their tall forms draped in shimmering fabrics that seemed alive with light. Lady Zarela kept Jack standing behind her chair while she ate and conversed. Halfway through the meal, the conversation turned to interstellar travel. "The human vessels are quite fascinating in their crudeness," said one provincial leader. "They still use combustible fuels for their early stages." Laughter rippled around the table. "Perhaps our human guests have insights to share," said an elderly luminary, the only one who had acknowledged Jack with a nod earlier. Lady Zarela smiled thinly. "Servant, tell the esteemed guests about your species' attempts at space travel." Jack stepped forward. "While our technology may seem basic to you, humans reached our moon using slide rules and computers less powerful than your simplest devices. Our ingenuity compensates for our technological limitations. The Curiosity rover on Mars operated for 15 years beyond its expected lifespan because of human resourcefulness." The table grew quiet. Some Viridians looked intrigued. "Our Voyager probes left our solar system and continue to send data after more than 80 years in space. We adapt, we improvise, and we persevere." Lady Zarela's face had hardened to stone. She stood abruptly. "How amusing," she said, her voice sharp enough to cut. "My servant forgets himself and thinks his accomplishments worthy of mention in such company." She turned to face Jack fully. "You are here to serve, not speak. Know your place, human." Jack met her gaze. "My place is as a representative of Earth." The hall went silent. Lady Zarela's eyes widened, then narrowed to slits. She stepped closer to Jack, her voice low but carrying in the quiet room. "You are nothing but a servant. Less than that. A primitive curiosity we study for amusement." Then she did the unthinkable. She spat directly in his face, the fluid landing on his cheek and slowly dripping down. "Clean yourself, servant," she hissed, "and remember who you are." The dining hall remained frozen in silence. Jack stood motionless, the Viridian fluid slowly trailing down his cheek. Every instinct from his military training screamed at him to respond, to act, to do something. Instead, he reached up with deliberate slowness and wiped the spit away with the back of his hand. Without a word, He turned and walked out of the hall. His footsteps echoed in the empty corridor as he made his way back to the human quarters. His mind raced through options: official complaints, requesting early return to Earth, or simply enduring the remaining 9 months of this exchange. None felt right. When he reached his room, a message waited on his communication pad. It was from Carol Young, the diplomatic officer. Emergency meeting. Human quarters common area. Now. All 11 other humans were already gathered when Jack arrived. Their faces showed a mix of anger, embarrassment, and concern. "We heard what happened," Carol said. "News travels fast here. Are you okay?" Dr. Wells asked, her face tight with worry. Jack nodded. "I'm fine. My pride's seen worse days." "This has gone too far," Paul said. "We need to contact Earth and demand extraction. And show the Viridians they've beaten us." Jack asked. "They have beaten us," someone muttered. Jack shook his head. "No, they've insulted us. There's a difference." A soft knock at the door interrupted them. When Carol opened it, a Viridian wearing the simple garb of the cultivator caste stood there, looking nervously over his shoulder. "May I enter?" he asked. "I am Kren." Jack recognized him from their arrival day. The humans made space as Kren slipped inside, closing the door quietly behind him. "What Lady Zarilla did was wrong," Kren said without preamble. "Such treatment goes against the true spirit of Viridian hospitality, regardless of caste." Yet none of the other luminaries objected, Jack pointed out. Kren's face showed what might have been shame. "Our society, it has grown rigid in many ways. But there is something you should know, something that might help." He explained that despite appearances, Viridian society wasn't entirely based on birth or biology. There was one way to change your status: the arena. Any Viridian can challenge another to combat in the sacred arena, Kren said. "Victory earns respect and rights. It is an ancient tradition from before we reached the stars." "Combat?" Dr. Wells asked, alarmed. "You mean physical fighting?" Kren nodded. "It is rarely used now. But the right cannot be denied, even to visitors." Jack leaned forward. "You're saying I could challenge Lady Zarela?" "It would be unprecedented for an off-worlder," Kren admitted, "but technically permitted under our oldest laws." The room erupted in objections. Carol was the loudest. "Absolutely not. We're here as diplomatic representatives. Fighting in some alien gladiator ring would destroy everything we're trying to build." "And what exactly are we building here?" Jack asked quietly. "A relationship where they see us as servants forever, where they can spit in our faces when we speak up." He turned to Kren. "How does this challenge work?" "You would file formal notice. Lady Zarilla would have no grounds to refuse. The combat would take place in 7 days in the central arena. The winner is declared when one fighter yields or is rendered unable to continue." Carol grabbed Jack's arm. "Listen to yourself. This is madness. She's from a warrior culture with different biology and probably years of training. And more importantly," added Dr. Wells, "what happens if you lose?" Kren's expression grew grim. The defeat without yielding often results in permanent injury, sometimes death, though that is rare in modern times. Jack stood up and walked to the window. The Viridian capital spread out below, beautiful and alien. He thought about Earth, about what humanity's place would be in this new galactic community if they accepted their designation as servants. "How do I file this challenge?" he asked. "Jack." "No," Carol pleaded. "The diplomatic implications will be worse if we continue to be treated this way," Jack finished. "Sometimes diplomacy needs a demonstration of strength." He turned to Kren. "I want to challenge Lady Zarela. Today." The official challenge was registered the next morning. By midday, everyone on Viridia knew that a human had challenged a luminary to arena combat. By evening, it had become the only topic of conversation on the planet. Jack sat alone in his quarters when a message arrived from Earth. Admiral Harris, his direct superior, appeared on the screen, face red with anger. "Harper, what the hell do you think you're doing? We've got the President and half the UN Security Council breathing down our necks." "Establishing respect, sir," Jack replied calmly. "You're risking an interstellar incident. The Viridian ambassador on Earth is threatening to withdraw all technological assistance if you don't withdraw the challenge immediately." "With all due respect, sir, that confirms what I suspected. They need us to accept a lower position for their social structure to work. I can't withdraw." The Admiral's voice softened slightly. "Jack, I understand your position, but these aliens have technology centuries beyond ours. Their representative has never lost a match. Stand down. That's an order." "I'm sorry, sir, but according to the exchange agreement, I'm under Viridian authority during this program. You can't give me orders here." The Admiral's face darkened. "You'd better hope you're not making the biggest mistake in human history." The screen went blank. Jack barely had time to reflect when his door chimed. Kren stood outside with a small package. "May I enter?" "We have little time." Inside, Kren unwrapped the package to reveal a data crystal and what looked like a medical scanner. "Lady Zarila has accepted your challenge as our laws required," Kren said. "The match is scheduled in 6 days at the Central Arena." "What can you tell me about her fighting style?" Jack asked. Kren's expression grew worried. "She is one of our most decorated arena champions. She has killed 3 opponents who refuse to yield. The odds makers are giving you less than 1% chance of survival, let alone victory." "I've faced bad odds before. Not like this." Kren activated the data crystal, showing holographic images of Lady Zarila fighting various opponents. Her movements were blindingly fast, her strikes powerful enough to crack protective armor. "Viridians appear stronger than humans because of our exoskeletal structure," Kren explained, using the scanner to show Jack a detailed image of Viridian anatomy. "But this strength comes with vulnerabilities." He pointed to specific joint connections where the exoskeleton was thinnest. "Here and here. These are pressure points where even a human's strength could cause significant pain or temporary paralysis." For the next 5 days, Jack trained in secret with Kren. Early mornings and late nights were spent studying Viridian physiology and practicing techniques to exploit their weaknesses. During the day, Jack maintained his normal routine to avoid suspicion. Word spread among the humans, and despite their initial objections, they began to help. Dr. Wells analyzed the medical data Kren provided, identifying additional vulnerabilities. Paul calculated the precise force needed to affect Viridian nerve clusters. On the eve of the match, Earth made one final attempt to stop it. The human ambassador herself arrived on an emergency transport, bursting into Jack's quarters unannounced. "Major Harper, this has gone far enough," Ambassador Diane Foster said. "I've been authorized to offer you immediate return to Earth with full honors and promotion." "And the other humans here?" Jack asked. "We're negotiating better treatment." "Negotiating from a position of weakness never works, Ambassador. They'll keep seeing us as servants unless we prove otherwise." Ambassador Foster sighed heavily. "Lady Zarila has killed opponents, Major. She's a trained fighter with biological advantages. What makes you think you can win?" Jack smiled slightly. "Because she expects to win easily. Pride is a weakness, and she has plenty of it. And if you lose, then humanity learns an important lesson about our new neighbors." After the ambassador left, Jack sat alone in the dark. Kren had shown him recordings of Lady Zarilla's previous fights. She was skilled, no doubt, but Jack had noticed something important. She fought to impress, with flourish and spectacle. She played to the crowd. Jack wouldn't make that mistake. He had one advantage. Lady Zarila would underestimate him until it was too late. Tomorrow, he would either make history or become a cautionary tale. The central arena rose from the heart of the Viridian capital like a massive silver bowl. Built thousands of years ago during their early civilization, it had been preserved as a cultural monument. Today, it was filled to capacity for the first time in over a century. Jack stood in the preparation chamber, a circular room beneath the arena floor. The walls displayed various weapons and armor pieces, all available to combatants by ancient tradition. Ambassador Foster and the human delegation waited with him. "It's not too late to withdraw," Foster said quietly. Jack was strapping on basic protective gear, lightweight armor that covered his chest, forearms, and shins. Nothing that would slow him down. "Actually, it is too late," he replied. "The challenge has been accepted. Withdrawing now would mark humanity as cowards in their eyes." Dr. Wells approached with a small case. "I've analyzed their medical data. Their exoskeleton is thinnest at these nerve junctions." She pointed to spots on a diagram. "A focused strike here could temporarily disrupt their motor control." "Thank you," Jack said, studying the diagram carefully. The chamber door opened, and Kren entered. The arena is full. Every Viridian with access to communication networks is watching. This has become the most viewed event in our recent history. "Great," Jack muttered. "No pressure." "Lady Zarela has selected her equipment," Kren continued. "Standard bio-enhanced armor and a shock staff." "And your weapon selection?" Ambassador Foster asked Jack. Jack looked at the wall of alien weapons, then shook his head. "None." "What?" Foster exclaimed. "You can't go in unarmed." "I'm not going to win this by outfighting her with weapons I barely understand," Jack explained. "I need to be faster, smarter, and do what she doesn't expect." A deep tone sounded through the chamber. "It is time," Kren said. The human delegation wished Jack luck. Even Carol, who had been most opposed to the challenge, gripped his hand firmly. "Show them what humans are made of." Jack nodded and followed Kren up a long ramp. The sounds grew louder as they approached the surface. Thousands of voices, a rhythmic thumping that might have been the Viridian equivalent of applause. Bright light waited at the end of the tunnel. "Lady Zarela will make a grand entrance," Kren explained. "She always does. The crowd expects it." "Let her have it," Jack replied. When Jack stepped into the arena, the noise doubled. The circular fighting space was about 50 meters across, with smooth metallic flooring. Tiered seating rows around it, filled with blue-skinned Viridians. Near the top sat the council of luminaries in their ornate garments. Jack walked to the center circle and stood quietly, studying the environment. The sun reflected off the metal floor. There were no obstacles, nowhere to hide. A fanfare of alien instruments blared. The crowd roared as Lady Zarela emerged from the opposite tunnel. She wore gleaming silver armor that seemed to flow with her movements. In one hand, she carried a staff that crackled with energy at its tip. Her head was held high, her expression confident. She strode forward, waving to the cheering crowd. When she reached the center, she looked down at Jack with open disdain. "A servant should not stand so tall before their better," she announced, her voice amplified for the entire arena to hear. "Today, I will teach humanity its proper place in the galaxy." Jack remained silent. "No final words, human." She laughed, turning to play to the crowd. "Perhaps wisdom has finally reached your primitive brain. Too late, I fear." She addressed the spectators again. "Witness how quickly the human's challenge ends. Let all remember this day, when a foolish creature learned the price of disrespect." The crowd roared its approval as Lady Zarela took her fighting stance, twirling her staff in an impressive display of skill. Energy crackled from the weapon as she moved it through complicated patterns. Jack simply stood, watching her carefully, his face expressionless. A single tone sounded, the signal to begin. Lady Zarela smiled, confident in her imminent victory. Jack didn't move a muscle. Lady Zarela moved first, as Jack knew she would. She lunged forward with her energy staff extended, aiming for a quick, humiliating victory. The tip of the weapon sparked with blue energy as it cut through the air toward Jack's chest. Jack waited until the last possible moment. Then he moved. He stepped slightly to the side, allowing the staff to pass within millimeters of his armor. In the same fluid motion, he grabbed the shaft of the weapon just below the energy field. Using Lady Zarilla's forward momentum against her, he pulled sharply while stepping out of her path. The crowd gasped as Lady Zarilla stumbled forward, off balance for the first time in anyone's memory. Her expression shifted from confidence to surprise. Regaining her footing quickly, she spun and struck again, this time with a side sweep meant to catch Jack across the ribs. Again, he moved at the last second, not retreating, but stepping inside her guard. His right hand shot out, striking precisely at the joint where Kren had shown him the exoskeleton was weakest. Lady Zarilla hissed in pain and jumped back, circling Jack warily now. The crowd had grown eerily quiet. "Lucky dodge," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. But luck runs out. She attacked again, this time with a complex series of strikes designed to overwhelm with speed and power. The staff moved so quickly it blurred in the air, energy crackling with each swing. Jack didn't try to match her speed. Instead, he watched her body, not the weapon. Each Viridian attack pattern began with a subtle shift in weight, a tell that Dr. Wells had identified from the medical records. He anticipated rather than reacted. 12 seconds into the match, Jack saw his opportunity. As Lady Zarilla extended for a powerful thrust, he dropped low and swept his leg against her ankle joint, another weak point in the Viridian exoskeleton. Her leg buckled. As she fought to keep her balance, Jack struck the nerve cluster at the base of her neck with the heel of his palm. It was the precise spot that controlled motor functions in Viridians. Lady Zarilla's arms went momentarily numb. The staff clattered to the ground. The crowd made a sound that might have been collective shock. Recovering quickly, Lady Zarilla abandoned the staff and attacked with bare hands, her face contorted with rage. Her fingers were curved like claws, aiming for Jack's eyes and throat. All pretense of ceremonial combat was gone. She wanted to kill him. Jack caught her wrist and used her momentum again, turning her own strength against her. He twisted, applying pressure to another nerve junction. Lady Zarilla's arm locked in place, paralyzed temporarily. 24 seconds into the match, Jack delivered 3 rapid strikes to key points along her torso, each one targeting a different nerve cluster. The Viridian's movements became increasingly uncoordinated as her exoskeletal system began to short-circuit. In a last desperate move, Lady Zarilla lunged at Jack with her full weight. It was exactly what he had been waiting for. As she came forward, he stepped to the side while hooking his foot behind her knee. At the same time, he struck the final pressure point at the base of her skull. Lady Zarilla collapsed to the ground, her body rigid and immobile. Only her eyes could move, wide with disbelief. Jack stood over her, his breathing barely elevated. He placed one foot lightly on her chest, the traditional Viridian position of victory. The timekeeper's voice echoed through the stunned arena. Combat concluded. Duration: 30 seconds. Perfect silence fell across the arena. Not a single Viridian made a sound. The Council of Luminaries sat frozen in their seats. The human delegation at the side of the arena stood with their mouths open in shock. In just half a minute, Jack Harper had done what no one thought possible. Lady Zarilla lay defeated, her eyes filled with humiliation and rage as she stared up at the human who had bested her without saying a single word. The silence in the arena stretched for what seemed like eternity. By Viridian tradition, Jack now had the right to demand Lady Zarilla's surrender or take her life. The foot on her chest was the formal position from which this choice was made. Jack looked down at Lady Zarilla. Her eyes burned with hatred and shame, but beneath that, he saw fear. She expected him to kill her as she would have killed him. Instead, Jack removed his foot and extended his hand. Confused murmurs rippled through the crowd. This was not how arena combat ended on Viridia. The victor did not help the defeated. Lady Zarilla stared at Jack's outstretched hand, then at his face. Jack remained silent, his expression neutral but not unkind. After several long moments, she reached up and allowed him to help her to her feet. As soon as she was standing, Jack turned and walked away. He did not boast or play to the crowd. He did not demand her surrender. He simply walked toward the exit tunnel where the human delegation waited. The arena remained eerily quiet as he left. No one had ever seen a match end this way. Ambassador Foster met him at the tunnel entrance, her face showing a mixture of shock and relief. "That was unexpected," she whispered. "Not to me," Jack replied. 3 days later, Jack was summoned to the Council of Luminaries chamber. The 11 council members sat in a semicircle, their faces unreadable. Lady Zarilla was noticeably absent. "Major Jack Harper, the head luminary, began. Your victory in the arena has created an unprecedented situation." Jack stood at attention, saying nothing. "No non-Viridian has ever challenged and defeated a luminary. Our laws did not anticipate such an event." The luminary paused. "After much deliberation, we have determined that humans can no longer be classified as servant caste." Jack allowed himself a small smile. "Furthermore," another council member continued, "the arena victory has revealed that our assessment of human capabilities was incomplete. We propose a revision to our exchange program. Humans will be assigned positions based on individual qualifications, not species classification." "That would be acceptable," Jack said, speaking for the first time. The head luminary leaned forward. "There is one more matter. By tradition, you are entitled to make a formal request of the defeated. Lady Zarilla awaits your decision." The chamber doors opened, and Lady Zarilla entered. She walked with dignity, but kept her eyes lowered, the Viridian expression of submission. She stopped before Jack and waited. Jack took a deep breath. "I request that Lady Zarilla serve as the primary liaison between Viridia and Earth, to work directly with humans as equals and help both our species understand each other better." Surprise flickered across Lady Zarilla's face as she looked up. The council members exchanged glances. "An unusual request," the head luminary noted. "You could have demanded much more." "Revenge isn't valuable," Jack replied. "Understanding is." 2 weeks later, Jack stood on the observation deck watching the shuttle depart. Half the human delegation was returning to Earth to report on the revised exchange terms. The others, including Jack, would stay to continue their work, now as respected representatives rather than servants. Dr. Wells joined him at the window. "The news reports from Earth say you're a hero. They're calling it the 30-second victory." Jack shook his head. "I'm not a hero. I just refuse to be treated as less than I am." "Lady Zarilla has been different since the arena," Dr. Wells observed. "She actually listened during this morning's meeting." "People can change when their worldview is challenged," Jack said. On the far side of the deck, Lady Zarilla stood watching the same shuttle depart. When she noticed Jack looking her way, she did something surprising. She placed her hand over her heart and inclined her head slightly, the Viridian gesture of respect between equals. Jack returned the gesture. No words were needed. Sometimes actions speak more clearly than any language across the stars.